Mr. Palmer.
Should have written Jim for a list, huh?
Yeah. I love him. I love the one he told on K about, this little old lady. Okay, we just as red as could be, but laughing so hard.
Spreadsheet. Sometimes we.
He told one when he came back to the Winchester supervisor, he told about Craig and the guy who's up against, who's gone to Yale.
I found that balance sheet. It has to be about that too. That's why. Okay, whatever. Because then I was changing numbers on it.
Once we have that,
I'll show you.
I'll show you. What it's like. Should be pretty.
Penny selling lumber, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, he sells lumber, he sells packages for all. That's what he does. And then it's sort of like, yeah, and then Field honor.
And generally you get in, figure it all out. Well, yeah.
Can't you over where I live? They have,
So
they have
Facebook.
those stamps and then there's a circle. Where they sort of go different directions. And I never understood what the circle was for, but they're all full of sediment, but the rock. Parts like.
There might be someone who might be said a day before. Sharing that way.
Yeah.
It's like, Jesus, man, you guys have a big old story all day.
Yeah. Yeah, and then we'll.
Yeah, they shot Kate. I thought she was running.
Have you ever been out to the range? Ain't bad, but it's going through. Are we ready?
Good?
We'll go ahead and apologize for the delay, but we'll go ahead and call this Board of Supervisors meeting to order. And I've asked Supervisor David Gomez to lead us in the pledge. Please join me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Gomez. We'll now go to call to the public. Is there anyone that'd like to address? Yes, please. State your name and.
Hi, my name is Erin Miller. I work in the recorder's office. I just wanted to let everyone know that a 90-day notice will be going out May 1st. We have roughly about 2,700 going out, so people can expect those in their mail.
What's a 90-day notice?
The 90-day notice is going to be letting you know about the primary and general elections that are coming up. They'll let you know when your ballot is going out and also what day of the day your vote is.
Thank you. Anyone else? If not, I would like to take a.
Go ahead. Did you want to, is that an agenda item to introduce your folks? Gotcha.
Okay, yeah, I'd like to take a point of personal privilege. The board wants to know, wants to let Sheriff Sumner and his family know how sincere our condolences go out to him and his family. It's not very easy to lose a child. You always figure your children ought to bury you, not vice versa. But this board prays that he will feel the spirit of the Lord Jesus Christ, peace and comfort at this time and trial of his life. So anyway, we wanted Sheriff Sumner to know that. Also, yes.
So you get done, I'd like to also address.
Also, Derek, please tell Brian and everyone that's involved with the lettering that's behind us. It really adds to this boardroom and we appreciate that. So those are the comments of the board. Gentlemen, do you have any? Okay, Derek.
We don't often get a chance to sometimes share good news. Maybe we're just not very good at looking for it. But yesterday in the Arizona Republic, there was a headline article that said the best place to live in Arizona is right here where we sit. I'd never heard of Niche before. I looked them up. They're a service. It may be one person sitting in his basement. I have no idea. But they rank things like colleges and communities and in this case, counties. And whatever criteria they used, Greeley County came out on top. Pima County, I gave Kay Gale, our former administrator, a call yesterday just to razz her that they finished second. She should have stayed here. And even the great state of Maricopa came in behind little old Greenlee County. So it's a chance to crow a little bit. And I gave each a copy of the article. And so we're the best place to live in Arizona. Like I say, that's part of that is because there's not that many of us here and we like our elbow room. But it was time that we toot our own horn a little bit. Thank you to Niche. Thank you.
Thank you. Good work. Anyone else in call to the public? If not, we'll go to agenda item 2. The Board of Supervisors convene as the Board of Directors of the Greenlee County Public Health Service District and after the order of business, will reconvene as the Board of Supervisors. A, consent agenda.
I so move that we approve the consent agenda as posted. I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion passes. We are now convened as the Board of Supervisors, and the Board of Supervisors will convene as the Board of Directors of the Greeley County Flood Control District, and after the order of business, will reconvene as the Board of Supervisors. A, consent agenda.
So move that we approve the consent agenda as posted. I'll second that.
We have motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion passes. We are now convened as the Board of Supervisors, and we'll go to agenda item number 4. Gene, you have some special guests here with us, and we appreciate what you do.
Well, thank you. Yes, Jean Swenison, work for engineering. And as you know, we've been working to get the AmeriCorps members over here for quite some time. And this is to work on the Duncan Franklin watershed. We'll be building rock dams, and I wanted to, they've only been here a few days, but already they've solved one of my big issues about trying to figure out how we were going to GPS all of the rock dams. So we don't have, so they know that they're new. If we have things we want to do on top of them and so forth, and we've got 3 of them volunteering to do that and figure it out, and we're going to go to my office afterwards and see if the prototype has worked. So with that, I'll introduce them. Maybe have Melissa come up first, and then you can introduce. I'll team or they'll introduce themselves.
Okay.
You listened to their introduction talk last night.
Hi, I'm Melissa. I'm the team leader for this AmeriCorps group. Our team is called Fire 2. So we came from the Southwest region, but we're from all over the country. We came to this program to help serve communities, strengthen communities, and then develop our own leadership skills. And then do you want us to stand up here maybe so we can introduce ourselves?
Yeah, please.
Okay.
We're just glad you're here.
We're glad to be here.
Come right along this wall. There you go. Now you look like a lion.
It's the tall guy.
Is it okay if we talk like from here?
Please,
Okay.
please.
Once again, I'm Melissa from Massachusetts, team leader.
I'm Delaney, I'm from Connecticut, and I am a PT coordinator and assistant.
I'm Jake, I'm from Spokane, Washington. I'm in charge of quantifiables, and I'm also an assistant team.
Hi, I'm Mary. I'm from Massachusetts. I'm the Life After AmeriCorps representative.
Hi, I'm Catherine Hamlet. I'm from Graham, North Carolina, and I'm the community relations rep for our team.
I'm Jimmy Sigmund. I'm from North Carolina as well, Raleigh, and I am the Service Learning Initiative and the Assistant Community Relations Representative.
Hi, my name is Danny. I'm from Miami, Florida. I am the team builder as well as a vehicle safety and tools representative. Hi, I'm Vienna from New York, and I'm the grocery coordinator and independent service projects.
So as I was saying, we come from all over the country. NCCC members, the National Civilian Community Corps is what it represents. We are all between the ages of 18 to 26 years old. We sign on for between like a 10 to 11 month contract. And for a lot of people, it's like a transition year between like schooling and work. And it's an opportunity to help explore careers and just get some work experience, professional experience out in the field. So it's a really good opportunity. And then we're also able to work on a wide variety of projects, which we'll tell you about, helping promote food security, build homes, mentor youth, respond to disasters, and support other critical needs. So I'll let Jimmy and then Delaney talk about 2 of the projects that we worked on, and then any other people that want to share.
So our first project of this AmeriCorps NCCC round was our project at Washington, Arkansas. Washington is this little state park in the town of Washington, Arkansas. It's both a state park and a town of about 90 people. Our job there was to help promote their infrastructure and revitalize the park. It's full of a ton of old buildings from around the 1870s. And And another thing that they needed us to do is revitalize their fences because they keep a lot of horses around due to the historical nature of the park. And they have this little buggy that the horses pull around. So they need fences to keep the horses in. So our job was to take down the old fences and put in new ones. So the horses stay in place. If you'll notice, a lot of us have boot paints on our boots. It's because we were also painting the fences down there. Just generally making the park look a lot nicer, and in the process, assisting the community with whatever they needed. One of the random things that we did was we helped clean a building for a wedding that took place. So that is the summary of our project in Washington, Arkansas. And with that, I will pass it to Delaney.
Hi, so like you said, I'm Delaney. Our second project that we worked on was in McAllen, Texas, which is way South Texas, right on the border. And basically our main project is we were working with the United Way of South Texas to provide volunteer income tax assistance to people who make under $60,000 a year. So basically we would work with a few other volunteers, and we got trained on how to perform income taxes, and then we would provide these tax services and this tax preparation for free for people in the community who needed that assistance. And actually throughout our time there, we were able to give back almost, I think, $1.5 million to the community with our income tax, which was a huge help to the community and many of the families in the community. That was crucial to kind of their yearly income. And then on top of that, we also did work with the Salvation Army in South Texas. So we helped kind of do some cleaning and just stocking and organizing around their United Way shelter. And then we also helped to serve around 500 meals to the community through their food kitchen that they have there. We also did some of our independent service projects through there, and we worked with a organization called 13-2 Initiative, where basically we would package up and organize clothes that would be then distributed down to refugees camping down by the border. And then, yeah, so that was most of what we did. We spent about 3 months there, most of the tax season, and we were able to get a lot done, and we're hoping we can get just as much done here.
Did anyone else want to share anything? And then we're just really excited to be here for the next 3 weeks. We're going to be working with Jean very closely, and she's already taught us so much about rainwater, evaporation, flooding in the area, and we're going to be helping build rock dams to help mitigate some of the flooding and such in the area. So we're really excited to be here.
Melissa, you've been here 3 days, correct?
Yes.
What's one of the things that you didn't expect to see in
I would say the hills, the cliffs. We drove in, it was absolutely stunning, and not at all what I expected Arizona to be like. Just so beautiful.
I didn't expect to see palm trees, to be honest.
For Miami.
I'm seeing one right now, right behind us.
and you could go north. We have go almost to we go below timberline, but not quite there, and our county does. So we have some of the major I can't even think of the word, but anyway, different steps in we have low desert up to alpine pine. So anyway, I hope you get up the trail. You've never heard of the Coronado Trail. Of course, I've already asked you about Sandra Day O'Connor, and anyway, there's a lot of things, a lot of rich history here. We have the largest open pit copper mine in the northern hemisphere and the second largest in the world. So that is I hope you get a chance to go up there and see just how big that equipment is. And we have a rich history here. We have 3 rivers in this county, which a lot of counties don't. And we have a great heritage here, of course. We haven't been here that long, but we hope you enjoy it. And I hope, Ms. Swenson, you couldn't have come to a better place. You'll learn more about conservation, because her and her husband have been all over the world doing exactly the kind of things. And I'm sure if you get a chance to go to her ranch, you'll learn a lot of the things. They don't just talk about things, they go out and do it. And what they've done is just incredible. So welcome. And I guess, Gene, you wanted us to go out and see what we need to set a date.
Yeah.
If you want to, or I said, given you all my cell number, if you text on that, because we will have to organize, because we will be working, you've got to get through locked gates at Lazy Bee headquarters to get to the rocky places that we're going to be working on. So really
Did you have
absolutely
a
want
date that you have in mind? Because I that would really help. And I'm sorry if I caught you flat-footed, because
that actually
I
would
don't know
be,
about these. Well, I know my schedule's swamped.
I know. So why don't they will be here until May 10th. They're working basically Monday through Friday. Told them they might want to change their days off so they could be at the pool sometimes. But I think for right now, they're sticking with weekends, just Saturday and Sunday off. So Monday through Friday. The only other day that we have potentially scheduled right now is going to go talk to the Forest Service about future careers on May 2nd. And other than that, between now and May 10th will be their last day that they're working.
Where on the Lazy Bees, is it inside near the headquarters, or is it?
Oh, it's up above it. We're going to be working in the coyote wash, which that's where we're going to start off, because they got enough rocks there. I'm not used to being in a place that's maybe has potential lack of rocks, but we had to search that out a little bit. And so we're going to be going up coyote wash, because it goes down to railroad wash, which is one of the major ones going to that. Our first priority was going to be trying to get above all the sediment dams and work on them first. And we will, if we can find enough rock. Didn't ever think that was a shortage in Arizona. But
There are lines of rock
places.
places of that ranch, as you may have already seen, yeah.
Yeah. And that's
Not
one of the
first
things,
to have done this.
yeah, yes, to do that and doing this in a little more concentrated way. And yes, because it's certainly been thought about in the map, which they got to meet our doggy calf. They got to meet our doggy calf. Two. It is that, all that white fan-shaped area. That was what caught my attention to begin with. I said, we can maybe work and do something from that.
Good.
Sorry.
What are you looking at next week?
So I'd love to pick a date if that's okay with you. I just didn't want to corner you also.
Oh, that's May. That's
Right. Exactly. That's the more constrained.
oh, I've got it. Yeah, the second, third, fourth, you're gone. Yeah, then the next weekend to that, I'm gone. So
No,
looks the 29th look good for you. Monday, because after the second, I'm gone.
We could also make arrangements to go out there. and do
Separate.
As well, if you wanted to.
29th is okay.
and on our public relations.
Gene, will the 29th work? Can you see it,
Monday?
a
That should
Monday?
work. Yep,
Actually, next Monday.
yep, next Monday.
Next Monday? That would be the best day.
We'll have got the hang of it by then. They're already started and they're getting that feel for rocks already. So
If you'll give us a time and.
you choose the time. Your time is more limited than ours. They're working from 7 to 3. We're trying to use the cooler part of the day. We may be shifting even to earlier then, but certainly from anywhere from 7 to 3. I'd pick the mornings. It's warming up.
See, I don't know.
6 to 2.
Yeah, I think so.
Are you at the gate by 7 then?
No, we'll be leaving the house probably at 7. So,
So 8 o'clock, meet you at the gate or?
okay, at Lazy Bee Gate.
Yeah.
At the highway or the headquarters?
Huh?
At the highway or the headquarters?
Maybe meet at the highway, because that's,
Okay.
and it had that rock hounding area too. The sign is a good landmark also. You want to meet by the rock hounding sign?
Oh, where it splits.
Yeah,
Yeah, we can do that.
okay.
So we won't go into the headquarters, you just, yeah, that, up there on the flat. Okay, so we'll meet you there at 8 o'clock
That
next
sounds good.
Monday.
Sounds good. Great. Thank you very
And
much.
look forward to getting to know you. Thank you. Thank you for what you do.
And Kat is the public relations person, so she'll probably be writing up and taking pictures, and you all might get into video of AmeriCorps.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I'll meet you at the highway right there.
I gotta look at my other calendar. I look at this one, but.
One more thing.
Okay. We will now go to agenda item 5. Mr. Larson.
Good morning, gentlemen. I think agenda item 5 is Hugh Supply. So this is a repeat of some action that you took previously. At that time, we're still getting acclimated to Hugh Supply, and they did not include shipping from wherever to their facility in their quotation. So we asked them to rectify that. Well, they did include shipping, but we're bringing this back to you because that increased their price. However, I discussed it with Tony and David Manus, and we arrived at the same conclusion that it was still appropriate to proceed with Hugh Supply, even though they're a bit higher than Prinsco.
Well, with that, yeah, this Prinsco. I mean, what happened? Anyway, okay. Thank you for the bids. Anyone have any questions? So it is your recommendation with Hughes Supply out of Safford then?
Yes, sir. Just to recap, if we went with Prinsco, we would have to travel to the far side of Phoenix.
That's right.
Pick up the pipe.
Haul it back. So the new amount is 17,591.34. That's that bottom one. Well, I move that we approve awarding the bid to Hughes Supply for the corrugated high density polyethylene storm drain pipe for the grant funded airport drainage project to Hughes Supply at a Safford for the amount of 17,591.34.
Second that motion. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is that to not to exceed?
Sure. Yes.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing now, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion passes. We can now go to 5B. Mr. Larson.
5B, C, and D. So Derek and I have talked at length about CDS money, congressionally directed spending. On the surface, it seems like quote unquote free money. It's really not. It's actually quite expensive in terms of the red tape that you go through, both applying for it and then administering it if you are successful. We did go ahead and start these 3 projects. And that was so that we could meet some deadlines. So this morning, if you nod your head the wrong way, we'll stop those applications where they're at. But the 3 that you have before you, the first one is on Ward Canyon Road. You may recall we do have a CDS project underway right now for the Soapbox Swash Bridge on Ward Canyon Road. This project is somewhat similar. It's on the other side of Verde Lee. And we have a deficient structure there that's actually, for reasons that I don't know, is not on our bridge inventory. But we propose to realign a little bit of Ward Canyon Road at that location. And in conjunction with that, we would build a new structure under the new alignment, and that existing bridge would go away.
Sure. Yes. Just quickly, for all 3 of these projects that are under this, congressionally directed spending, in your opinion, is the juice worth the squeeze? Right? I mean, we talked about, yeah, it sounds like free money, but it does sound like that there are a lot of hurdles to to have to overcome to be able to get those dollars. So in your opinion, does it make sense to apply for this funding?
Derek may have a different opinion than me, and I think it depends on the project. There's a whole swath of projects that you can do under that CDS umbrella. I think I kind of talked Derek into these because it's a workflow that I'm familiar with. These are transportation projects that flow through ADOT. I used to work for ADOT. It's a similar workflow to the Soapbox Canyon Bridge, and the different CDS projects have different match amounts, and these three have a very favorable match. The federal contribution is 94.7, I believe, or 94.3, which makes the local contribution 5% and change.
That could be in kind, correct?
Yes, sir.
Local match could be in kind.
So for those reasons, a favorable match, a workflow that we're familiar with, for these, at least in my opinion, the juice is worth the squeeze, as it said.
And to add to that, as we say, we kind of tangled on another project where we got someone involved and realized the juice was not worth the squeeze. But all of these CDS projects, they earmark, that's a bad word, they set aside a little bit of money for this particular project, but once it's granted, you have to run it through the federal or state agency that's over that subject matter. So if you're, for example, dealing with the Army Corps of Engineers on something dealing with flooding or riparian areas, that's a real tough lift, and it may not be worth the squeeze. In this case, transportation related items are something I say we're familiar with, that it's more streamlined than something else. If you had, for example, an environmental project, a CDS spending for a Superfund site, then buckle up, you're gonna be with it for a long time and a lot of red tape. These are, relatively speaking, that was the conversation we basically said, is these are things that we're already familiar with, we know what we're doing. And so it makes it easier, and it helps to have Reed's background and expertise with highways.
Sounds good.
I've kind of dipped into the information on these three projects, and just like the first one there, which is the bridge between Loma Linda and Verde. We have a lot of other plans besides that, walking from one location to the other, realigning and so on and so forth, being ran also through Seago, and so in other words, I'm in favor of all of these. Yeah. So why don't we take them individually, gentlemen, and because they are listed individually on our agenda, so let's go with 5B. Okay. For motion? Motion.
Well, I so move that we authorize to apply the offices of Arizona's congressional delegation for congressionally directed spending to fund the design of a project to realign approximately 1,400 feet of Wards Canyon Road at the Loma Linda Wash.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes. We will now go to 5C.
5C, Mr. Chairman, is similar in that it's on Ward Canyon Road. Ward Canyon Road is a major collector, classified as a major collector in our road inventory. This is a knob that juts out into the road. Literally, you drive underneath it if you're coming southbound. And it's fortuitous that Rudy's here with us today. A portion of this project lies within Clifton town limits, and a portion lies within the county. And Supervisor Gomez and I visited with Rudy and got him to nod his head the right way to it. So if we do move forward with this one, this would be kind of a joint venture, if you will, between the county and the town of Clifton. But it's a nasty knob that hangs out over the road, and there's a very sharp curve at that location. And what we propose to do is be quite invasive and just get rid of that whole high wall and slope it back. Mr. Rapier and I believe some of you broached this with Freeport, and they also nodded their head the right way tentatively. They're the property owner at that location. So things seem favorable to do some real good there. if we're awarded this CDS grant.
Yes, please. And with that said, also the Modest Love Memorial, Veterans Memorial is right at the bottom of that, just a little ways from that location. And with everything going on with this helicopter that they're proposing to put on top of the hill up here, where the flags are all at, it's gonna increase the traffic through that location. And if you really go and check out that bluff, it's got cracks in it everywhere. It's, you know, it's just a matter of time that there might be some problems there. So it's a good, favorable project because everybody would be parking down at the bottom down nearby.
With that, I move that we approve to apply to the office of the Arizona's congressional delegation for congressionally directed spending to fund the design of a project to realign Wardstone Road near the Morris Bluff Memorial to eliminate problematic horizontal curve as presented.
Nice second. Here we have motion second. Is there further discussion? Hearing now, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. We'll now go to 5D.
Mr. Chairman, as you read those, I just wanted to reinforce that these first two CDS projects are for design only. And as we've discussed before, once you get the design and get it done, that puts you in a very favorable position for subsequent construction. Also, for all three of these CDS projects, we would ask that either the board sign a letter of support to turn in with our application, or Mr. Rapier, the county administrator. What I would prefer is that all three of you signed a letter at the bottom. I don't need that doesn't require a separate motion, does it?
No, that's simply putting their name to what they're approving today.
So item D, unlike the first two, this is actually, we're underway with the design. And this request is for, to apply for CDS money for the construction of the east portion of the taxiway. And it's, as an unclassified airport, construction money at the airport is very, very hard to come by. And this is one way where we can secure construction funding for the airport that wouldn't otherwise be available to us since it is an unclassified airport.
Well, I move that we approve of the request to apply to the offices of Arizona's congressional delegation for congressionally directed spending to fund the construction of a project to rehabilitate the eastern portion of the taxiway. Design is currently underway as presented.
I second that motion.
Motion second. Is there further discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, gentlemen.
I want to be, I want to thank you, Mr. Bettis, for partnering with us and putting us on that item C.
Thank you. With that, we'll now go to agenda item 6. Here.
We're going to cover a couple of things. We're going to, I'm going to give you some updates and then I'll share some pictures with you. So you can kind of see what we've been able to do. You know, as we near the end of our fiscal year, and so that picture be minimized. When we began the year, we had never tiered our projects the way we did this year, and the idea was to actually have a plan to get some things accomplished. And as we move in through towards the end of the year, we're realizing we were pretty ambitious. Austin, would you catch the lights there? And we've accomplished quite a bit. But as we push to the end, we're realizing just how much we've asked of ourselves. We talked last time about having taken what amounts to a maintenance organization and turned it into a construction maintenance organization. And that has had its challenges, no question. But as we go through and as you see some of the pictures, you'll see that they've been able to accomplish a great deal. I think as we refine this process and discipline ourselves organization-wide to really say, what can we get done, will be more effective over time. Spillman servers, the first four, I believe, are IT related. The servers have been ordered and installation is scheduled for May 6th. As you recall, this is a critical piece of software, hardware that allows our law enforcement, our sheriff's office to run their operations. And so that will be installed on May 6th. The sheriff's internet domain, we are waiting for, is it one more quote?
One more quote.
One more quote that we're expecting in. Once that's that decision is made and the award is given, and that will likely fall underneath the threshold for the board. It's likely in the $7,000 to $8,000 range. Once that provider is selected, it's about a 7-day install to get that up and going. Consolidated dispatch. There's some good news on this front. In that, by and large, the infrastructure is complete. The state will cover additional, like we're gonna get, is it 3? I keep on calling them booths. They're not booths. Consoles, stations where a dispatcher could sit. And once consolidation is taking place, there's a good chance we'll have 2 people on duty. And then if an emergency we need a third, we could do that. But the state's gonna cover a lot of that cost. And there's been a lot of progress made on the governance structure as well. Those discussions are ongoing, but the state has been tremendously cooperative with us on this, recognizing some of our local hurdles we're trying to get past. The virtual server, it has been ordered, the selection has been made, and the products are en route, somewhere between here and wherever they were manufactured. And that's about a 10-day install that we thought. Once they arrive, maybe a little less. You know what? I put this, is it GNSS or GSNN, Reed? The base? Is it a GNSS or GSNN?
GNSS.
Okay, I've got it wrong on other slides. This essentially, Reed and a variety of people have worked on installing it's not much to look at. We're gonna look at a picture. I know Reed's quite proud of it, but it looks sort of like an early model of the R2-D2 character from Star Wars with a bit of helmet on its head. But it has been installed, and all that is left to do to make this broadcast county-wide and beyond is a repeater installed on our own tower on Guthrie. There's 2 parts to that. We got to make sure it's placed in the right place so it doesn't create any interference. And then Reed keeps volunteering to climb the tower, and I keep saying no. So then Matt volunteers to climb the tower, and I said, no, there are people who are suited to climb towers. But we're working on getting a quote to get the repeater up there. Expanding the landfill, as you recall, the discussion here has been whether or not it makes sense to combine our CD and our municipal waste. And that's a product of how much waste we receive each day. And so we have contracted with, I'm on the wrong one. Sorry about that. This is attempting to purchase state land adjacent to the landfill. And we are at this point working with an archaeological consultant to do a historic properties treatment plan. Interestingly, to those young people in the room, the historical thing we're trying to work around is a line of rocks, or 2 or 3. That were put there by the CCC back in the 30s, probably, give or take. And with that much time passage, it's now become a historic property. So your work may throw a wrench in somebody's plans 80 years from now. We knew this would be a process with hiccups in it, and this is one of the hiccups that we've got is to get this plan. I don't think we're gonna have to build walls and an observation deck through the landfill so we can see the rocks, but we'll find out. Older taxi rehab runway, we've covered this before. Dibble has changed contractors on the geotech consulting. Of course, this is still the design. They're finding out what is in the soil so that when we get money to eventually rebuild or redo that portion of the taxiway, it won't crack and fall apart. And they switch consultants. The newer part, this is of course run by ADOT. They're taking this start to finish for us. but they're waiting on them. Remind me what ARM is, Reed?
American Road Maintenance
Okay.
contractor.
But again, this is one of those where ADOT's covering all aspects of the project, and this is the newer part of the runway that, excuse me, taxiway that is already in better shape. At least we'll have someplace for people to taxi. Runway lighting, this is still in the design phase. We've covered this before. They're evaluating the wires that are in the ground, infrastructure is there, but that'll be designed. Once it's designed, then we'll go look for money to update it.
Do you have a date, you know, whoever you contracted with, that they'll have that completed? Or is that just still talking, or do we actually have someone committed to updating?
The runway lighting specifically,
Yes,
the end of the year
and then at the end of this year.
for the design, yeah,
Yes, okay,
Calendar year, correct?
that calendar year, yeah.
thank you.
Soap Rocks Bridge redesign, again, this is, there's no change on this. Once the design is in place, then it's much easier to get the funding to actually to do construction. Shovel ready means you've got all the planning done. And shovel ready projects are always popular, particularly with politicians who want to fund because they like to see something out of nothing or something changing, get a picture with. Hard to take engaging and inspiring pictures with plans. This is the one I started on earlier. I apologize. The landfill and CD cell, this is where we're trying to decide whether to combine or not. As you recall, holes for a C and D cell run $300,000 to $500,000, and they're filling up awfully quick. So we're basically, we've contracted Tri Hydro, which is an engineering firm that has experience specifically with landfills to help us evaluate whether or not it's better to dig a new CD cell or to simply combine our municipal waste. They do that, for example, over in Grand Canyon, the Safford landfill. Each has its pros and cons, but it may come down to a decision of what our daily intake at the landfill is. Loma Linda ball field and park fencing. As we recall, last time we had reoriented the fields, and so we know which way we're heading. I happened to get called, visit with Louis Bayardo, who is in charge of most of the physical facilities around the Valencia area. And he actually called about the Ward Canyon ball field and had some questions about the beautiful dirt we had there. And we got to talking about goat heads and the old Clifton High School field. And he said they tried everything. They went online, there's all kinds of rollers and gadgets. They tried dragging blankets, all of the things you read to try to get rid of goat heads. None of it worked. And so he says, the only way you're gonna get rid of it is you scrape off the top 2 or 3 inches and get rid of the plants that are coming up this time of year. But more importantly, you scrape all those dormant goat heads that get in your shoes and in your feet, and you get rid of them. He says, scrape them off, take them, get that dirt in the landfill, don't leave it anywhere nearby. So you'll see some pictures there in the process of doing just that, leveling the field and taking off that top layer of soil. And then we will replace that with some topsoil. That'll be good for planting grass on it. We have the materials for the fencing, the home run fence and all of that. The backstop will be reoriented so that it aligns with the sun as we expect it to be this time of year. This is a project I've been really pleased with because it's really been a joint effort between both of our public works crews. We've got Tony's crew has been working on designing the water and getting the irrigation system. We've got Dave's crew scraping off the land right now. They will also do the fencing installation. So that's it's turned out to be a bit bigger project than we did initially envisioned. But I'm not sure we could have ever gotten rid of the goat heads themselves if we didn't take this route. So, and playing baseball and goat heads can't be fun. The fairgrounds redesign. Reed has drawn up an initial part redesign with the directives the board has given us. We met Tony, myself, Dave, and Reed, and we give it a first once over. There's a meeting scheduled for next week with a broader group, to review some of the ideas that are there. And we've got a plan. I think we'll be able to develop a couple of options to present to the board probably within a month, maybe a little bit longer. But it incorporates the things we've talked about, redesigning how we park, redesigning the location of the ball fields. And we may need to rotate them to match the sunrise and sunset as well. But the basic concept is starting to take place, and like I say, Reed's got something he's been working on. We've got designs for realigning the roads in and out. One of the things we talked about is for big events, whether that be the county fair or something else, it's best to run traffic in one way and out another. So you're not trying to go in and out of the same gate. And this would accommodate that quite well. You are certainly, any one of you are welcome to peek in and look at the plans and give your thoughts. But we're working on it internally as we promised as our internal team. And we've also been given some clues on seeking funding from United Way in tranches rather than one big lump sum. So we'll be working on that as well.
Good. You have a goat head problem down there on that one field. And so,
On the one that's not grass planted.
right, and you'll have to be careful, whatever, if you move that dirt, all you're doing is just spreading those goat heads, so I'm sure you'll be aware of that.
That's good to know. I've not been out on that field in a long time, so. Okay,
It's bad.
we will take that into account. I'd suggest we give the kids who play like big fat soft shoes, they just walk on it and tear them up for us, but that might take a year or 10.
They're just like rocks, they just multiply.
They are bad. Worse than bunnies. Loma Linda Park well, the plumbing, the plumbing for those, we've got all the storage tanks on site. Interestingly, we've ended up with one extra very large storage tank that was on its way from California to here. It fell off the trailer and the top fill hole got damaged. We contacted the company and they said, we're not coming to get it, do whichever you want with it. It's acceptable for most of our uses, so we end up with an additional tank that we'll be able to use someplace. But the tanks that we ordered have all been deployed. We have 4 of them down. I've got some pictures of that. 4 of them down in Duncan at the well 3 option, and then we've got a total of 5 tanks there at the Loma Linda, and they're all the same color. And I think over a very short period of time, people are not going to notice them. They just kind of blend in. But we'll have lots of capacity. We've also got 3 new tanks at the landfill. So between those 3 areas, we will have plenty of water storage for roads for all of our needs there at the fairgrounds and at the Loma Linda Park. Like I said,
Besides the one that got damaged, did they replace that one with another one?
They did.
Okay.
Yes, yeah. So we've got an extra one. So yes, they sent a new one out, and Matt proactively reached out and said, what do you want us to do with this one? Where do you want us to put it so you can pick it up? And after a while, they said, we're not doing what you want.
Great.
So
Now, after you completed because I know the one down south at the fairground where you'll have to fence around those, correct?
we are gonna want to fence around them because that PVC, it's fine if everybody just leaves it alone, but if somebody decides to want to come be vandalistic, it's easy target, and it's a lot of water. So what's necessary to finish that part of the standpipe is we were having trouble getting the fittings to put the 3-inch pipe connected to the tanks. We have those fittings now. I talked to Tim Christner yesterday afternoon, and that should be completely plumbed by the end of the week. He's talking about putting a light on a pole elevated so that if you needed to fill up, in dark, you can do that. But yes, that needs to be fenced so it protects our infrastructure we put in there. Once that one's done, we will probably have the Loma Linda Park plumbed initially next week. Now, one of the things we want to try to do is come up with we've got 2 very different uses. One plumbing heading north to the ball field where we'll run an irrigation system, and another pipe heading east-ish to support a standpipe there at the little turnaround area, the parking area. we'd like to come up with some way so that you're not running all the way back over the tanks to turn the crank on and then turn it back off. But the plumbing itself for those tanks, should be done next week. The Duncan Sun Park covering will be part of the overall fairgrounds redesign. As we've talked before, the kitchens are done, the I building, the show barn expansion. The construction of the barn itself is complete. The tough part is getting the stakeholders together to decide on how best to deploy the existing paneling and fencing that we have so that it meets their needs the best. And that's always a challenge because we've got a lot of people who have strong opinions about that kind of an animal project. And so, but those meetings have already taken place. The junior livestock with the FFA and 4-H groups have sat down and given their 2 cents. And so I visited with Lindsay Bastine yesterday. There is an initial plan for that. I understood that our folks down there were also going to clean up. You'll see once we get to a couple of pictures. The building looks great, but the bottom looks like it was worked on in the rain. A lot of ruts and so forth. So they're starting to clean that up and get that bottom, that dirt floor prepared.
And they'll haul in the material like you have in the old existing barn. So, because that material's a mixture of sand and real fine rock.
Right.
Yeah.
So and that's something we'll be working with the public works folks to get fair. We want to knock down the ruts to begin.
And also, are they aware that I think the first weekend in August, there's Greeley County Showdown? So
Yes, we will be done before then, if not by the end of the fiscal year.
Thank you.
Yep, that's our plan. The new dance floor, which we also have some pictures of, the construction of that building was remarkably fast. Materials came in and in about 6-7 working days, that building is done. It is up, it looks fantastic. There'll be, we need to pour a floor. The floor we have, which looked big when it was the old cover, now looks puny. So we will form and pour that. That has not been scheduled yet. It's in priority behind the Lomeland. We're gonna get a lot of Lomeland landfill stuff done before we go and frame that. But then once the pin layout and the floor is poured, those 2 projects will be complete. And they'll be, the dance floor will be done in time for the county fair, if not by the end of the fiscal year. The event tent is, we already talked about, it is done.
I don't see anything here about sun cover loans in the park.
That's because, and let me update, that's a good point. I've got actually some of those things listed otherwise. It was not on our capital improvement plan.
I know.
But the materials have been ordered and Ward Brothers is taking care of the ordering of that. Once those materials come in, they will schedule and if the dance floor is any indication, it will take days to get that up. But it's dependent on when the materials arrive. So, but good question. Like I say, intended to update on that one. I think I actually left it off my other list as well. In addition to the ones that were on the list, we've been working for better part of the year to try and upgrade the Wi-Fi in all of our buildings. And that will arrive, the components have been ordered. And because of the complexity of that, it's going to take about a month to get all of the buildings rewired. Could be a little bit more. Ward Canyon, if you haven't had a chance, I know Supervisor Gomez has, but if you haven't had a chance to drive by those fields, that was remarkable. That's about a day and a few hours worth of work by Dave's road crew, and it looks really good. We've talked Morenci Water and Electric. There was a 3/4 inch line that ran on the upstream side of Ward Canyon Road through Ward Canyon. It's easily damaged either by flooding or if when you're cleaning up after flooding, it's been clipped by equipment before. So we're talking to them about installing a larger line that would potentially support grass on the fields. And that's, we're consider that as a CIP project for the next year. If we shift and try and do that right now, something else on our CIP is going to get bumped. But we've had those preliminary discussions. The water storage at the fairgrounds in Loveland Park were not on our CIP. We had the opportunity to purchase the tanks we needed to upgrade as we brought the Loma well online. So that's not our CIP, but it's pretty much done, and it will support much of the other stuff that we do. This will make us water independent in the Duncan area. We won't need to go to the town to get water for our needs. And then the board meeting redesign, you're sitting in front of it. That was something it came about when we had a meeting scheduled with Representative Siscomani and his lead team had asked if there was something in the room. Folks who visit want to show that, hey, I've been to Greeley County. We looked around and there was nothing in this room that said you're in Greeley County. We looked and found a few old pictures here and there. They were old and faded, and we said that doesn't cut it. So we just went without anything, but we ordered those letters behind you back in late November, early December, and they arrived about 2 weeks ago. I think they may have come out of the ground in Morenci out to some place to be turned into letters, and here they are. But we were pleased with that, and I give lots of credit to our public works team. Again, this was off schedule, but what a professional job. So
Yes. Great.
let me share a few pictures. One of the things that is a challenge is to see what we're actually doing. Here we go. So this is the dance floor at the fairgrounds.
See, that looks like the show. Right. That's a little big.
This would give Richard enough room to dance and show
He
everybody
needs
how
a
good
little-
his moves are.
Shakes the leg.
There you go. And then Ron will come out and challenge him.
All right.
But you can see there the cement, you can see it there on the bottom. That looks almost like a celestial beam of light. It's just the way my iPhone caught the sun that morning. But you can see down here along the bottom, this is the existing dance floor. It covers probably not quite half of the undercover surface. That's the infrastructure. The grandstand, the band stage will snug up right next to the building, so it will work very well in that regard as well. But this building went up remarkably quick. And you can see this green area here, and with the panels is the old barn. To your right in this picture is the exhibit building. So this part that juts out just a little bit is the new barn that we've constructed. This is from the other angle. It covers most of the existing area where there were trimming area for steers and pens for the larger livestock. Some of those larger livestock pens, as you can see just the left of this picture here, are still they're still there and they can be used, but most of the rest of it's undercover, and it'll give us a lot more room to construct a show ring. And one of the things they're talking about, I really commended Lindsay on this, is we're thinking in advance of how do we minimize the interaction between animal and patrons. People come to the fair who want to see barn animals, they don't get to see them, but where they're not, there's no negative interaction between the animals and the people. And this will give us the room to do that. This underneath, like I said, you can see that they did part of this when we were still having rain in the spring, but it's vast and it feels like you've got plenty of room to build it out. To the right is the old barn. We will, right now, once they get the layout done, we will then lay out the electricity to match so we're not having to rewire it and then come back and rewire it again. This is facing back again towards the old barn area. But I think this is going to be well received. I know that the community that uses this, the community livestock group, have been very pleased with the building and we're working on the build out inside. Here are the tanks in the Duncan area. That white line right across the bottom, which you can barely see, is the pipe that's going to connect all 4 tanks together. The well has come online. It's producing well. They actually, because of windstorms, they put about half full of each of those tanks to keep them on the ground. They poured the pad that they're all sitting on. That was a joint effort between the road crew and the public works maintenance crew as well. This is difficult to show, at least in my poor iPhone pictures, but the work that they're doing here at the Loma Landfill, that white truck covers 2 very large pieces of equipment. but there is a grader and a loader behind there. And they're loving, the field is high to the east and low to the west. It slopes off towards a canyon. So it will be leveled towards the west. And then, like I say, with that, the top layer of goat heads will go with it, and topsoil will be brought in on top of it. The backstop there, I did get a picture of the water truck just for water truck, but the backstop will be rotated to the northeast a little bit, so that the orientation of the field is northeast to southwest for the sun. Up there, you don't have any protection from the sun. It's a beautiful location. The view is unmatched, unless you're at first base trying to catch a ball coming at you. These are the storage tanks, water storage tanks, Loma Linda Park. Like I say, there's 5 of them, 2 that came with the original well. They have been relocated next to the 3 that have increased our capacity a great deal. Again, that will give us on-site water storage capacity for our roads in the northern and middle part of the county, as well as sufficient capacity for the ball fields, which are right on the other side of the little restroom we have there. I got the S and the N's backward here. GSNN, not GNS, yeah, whatever it is. This is during the construction. Reed and the road crew and the public works put together a nice little gathering to christen this, if you will. The fellow with the hat and the brown breeches on the right came out from where, Reed? DC, Virginia? DC to help us install that. To his credit, he did a lot of that on his own time. He had his daughter with him on sort of a vacation field trip, and they came out and they did the final install. This is a project as well where Reed's connections have been very, very helpful. There are a lot of people in the state as well as regionally who are very interested in the installation of this piece of equipment. I did not know that they did this way, but Reed sent me another picture where the same fellow's doing a similar job, pounding a very long piece of metal, except he's doing it in the bucket of a loader with a sledgehammer. I'm glad we did this one. And then there's your finished product. See, it does have a little R2D2 look to it, doesn't it? A little bit, early prototype. To those of us who don't know what that thing is, I'm not sure how impressive it is, but to those who know what it is, like Reed and a lot of those other folks who came around, that's a very impressive piece of equipment that will serve us for a very, very long time. It almost looks like a gun turret, but that thing right there is the antenna that points to Guthrie that will be picked up by the repeater and then broadcast back out over the county. Reed, did I completely blow that, or did I describe it mostly okay?
That's just right. That draping is just a plastic cover to protect the antenna underneath. And it does look pretty bland. I'm gonna go
What does
it up.
And what does it do exactly?
So the choke ring antenna that's hiding inside of that dome receives radio signals from the 4 or 5 different constellations of satellites, including GPS, which is United States, US military, Galileo is European. There's a Chinese one, I think it's Beidou, or I don't know how to say it. And I think there's a Russian one too, so I promise your data is safe.
You know, you look at that and you see those thin bolts just going into the ground and stuff, and you think that you could just go and bend that thing over. I mean, it's the precision and stuff that went on when they installed that. It's amazing. You go grab that thing won't, it won't budge a bit. That was really intriguing to watch that. I got there early because I had another commitment, but I saw that piece of steel and they were having trouble. I thought, it's gonna take a whole lot of rednecks to get that down to the ground. They got him in there, I'll tell you.
I think they found some rocks for you.
So that, that's our next part of our discussion. But with that, like I say, there's some on the ground evidence we've been able to get some things done. The tough part between now and hopefully the end of the fiscal year, where we get to you know, the finishing parts tied up and wrapped up. When you build a home, the foundation and the walls go up very fast, and then it's all the finishing work. And a lot of these projects, we're in the finishing work. And so, like I said, in hindsight, I think we were ambitious. We'd never done our capital improvements this way. We knew we had some one-time money to spend, and so we're able to do so. But, and we'll move into our budget discussion and suggest that we be much less ambitious, both for what we have for funds, but also what you build, you have to maintain. So if we plant, if we put 50 baseball fields around the county, we're mowing 50 baseball fields. If we build buildings, there's maintenance that goes with that, both structural maintenance as well as just upkeep on a building. As our chairman has oft reminded us, if you take care of it, it will last forever. If you have to go back and replace it, it's very expensive. And so as we move forward in our CIP planning, our capital improvement plan planning, we will want to keep the backside of that maintenance in mind as well, what it'll take to keep these things in good shape. Some will be fairly low maintenance. I assume this is one of those that's fairly low maintenance. Other things like fields and places where vandalism may be attracted, will take a higher level of care and a higher level of vigilance. So that is our CIP update, and happy to field any questions if you have any.
Derek, I have a couple of comments. You know, you said that the county's doing a lot more construction and I noticed on the ball fields, you said they did that they moved that dirt in a day. It was because you had the proper equipment to go in there and move that dirt and the know-how. On the construction, do the men have the tools that they need so they can go in and they're not waiting on tools? Cause I think that's has been a problem, and I would like to see, and I know I've talked to Austin about this, is sometimes having the right tool, the job is easy and it's done well, and not having the right tool, you spend 2 hours doing something that with the right tool you can do in a couple of minutes.
The answer is yes and no. So one of the things we've discovered in terms of how our construction planning in particular goes is we've discovered some organizational weaknesses between what the guy on the ground needs and the person who's responsible for acquiring it gets. And that can be across the board. So the Ward Canyon thing was, yes, we were in a slow period on our road department. We had the ability to mobilize that equipment. It's close in proximity. So we run that stuff down there, and the fields were essentially level. We've been using them, for example, for staging for the Clifton Hill climb for several years. They needed a good touch up. And so that was, if you will, low-hanging fruit. If you get a chance, and I know Supervisor Gomez drives by it every day, you go look at what they're doing out at Loma Linda. That's a much bigger project. They've got the right tools, but it's much bigger. We bit off a lot more to chew there. But yes, we have discovered some organizational things that by prioritizing what we're trying to do is expose some of our organizational weaknesses, which we are also working on. I fully expect that a year from now, we'll have some of those processes better refined. I was visiting with some of our folks who are on the ground yesterday morning about, some of the things that are working well, some things that are frustrating to them. So yeah, we intend to address that as well. Having tools, having materials with lead time, so they're sitting, when you're ready to throw up a piece of sheetrock, it's on the ground waiting. Those are things that make us more efficient. Again, I think some of that is taking what essentially was a maintenance organization and shifting towards not just maintenance construction, but new construction. We're learning about some of those kinks, and we're trying to address them as we go.
Anyway, thank you. I just, I know with the right tools, you can do jobs so much faster and easier and quicker and efficient, and that's what we do. So
one of the tools,
and I tend to agree that tools is
One of the
Very
tools we
critical.
have right now are people who know how to use the right tools. And we've got a couple of folks, particularly on staff right now, that are highly skilled. And so keeping up with what they already know how to do has been a challenge too. Because they are the right tools. Those are the right people in the right place doing the right things.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any comments?
Good information, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I think the board wants to thank those that are doing these projects. We appreciate their efforts because they are the face of Greenlee County and they're out there working, doing the things that we need to get done and so they can be used. And I'm sure your robot out there will pay humongous dividends in communications and stuff like that. And I'm sure these ball fields and all these other things that we're doing, the roads, hey, this just makes this a better place to live. And so thank you. And if we get on you, it's with love.
Mr. Chairman, if you were inclined to take a break, now might be a good time. 'Cause,
Okay.
The next part, when we talk about budgeting, which is not nearly as exciting. That's what we talked about up to now, and maybe not as exciting as young people from AmeriCorps. It's budgeting, so.
Let's come back at 9:30 then. That's 11 minutes. Thank you. Meeting back to order, and we will go now to agenda item 7 and go into a budget work session. Mr. Rapier, Mr. Ontiveros, and Mr. Adams.
We are gonna cover several topics, all of which unfortunately, lead to the conclusion that we're gonna have to be much more conservative in our budgeting approach for the coming year. We don't have all of the pieces put together, and Renee and Austin have been working on elected officials' budgets. We've had most if not all of those meetings that we expect. We're gonna be meeting with the county attorney's office this afternoon, talking about some things. We're gonna talk, what I want to present to you today is what's driving our budget discussion, which is shared sales tax revenue. I want to talk to you about some property tax considerations that I want to at least put back on the table. We'll talk about potential wage increases, and then we'll talk about some CIP planning and a couple other smaller topics. We've seen this, we see this at least once a month. This yellow column here is our current fiscal year shared state sales tax receipts. The average for the year through the first 9 months has been $480,000 a month, give or take. The trouble is, as you can see, is the trend. It's not the average, it's the trend line, which actually begins back here last October, which comes, we've been dropping ever since there. It's like most lines, it's up some months and down, but the trend line is what's been bothersome. Whether that 394 is repeated next month in a sub 4, and we won't know till about May 10th, give or take, what our April receipts were. So rather than simply doing the simple math and say, well, let's take 480,000 a month multiplied by 12, and let's use that as our number, which would be 5.7, which we actually have down here. That would be roughly what we would get if we just projected that. The trouble is, if that trend line doesn't turn around and we hit back to our averages, we're not going to hit 5.7. And so I'm very reticent to build a budget based on 5.7 million. The dynamics of the copper market, which is of course what drives our sales tax revenue, don't look like they're going to change. The price of copper has been good and has been fairly steady. It's the cost of production that enters into the calculations that result in money coming back to Green County. Now, statewide, income tax receipts are up a little bit. Well, that's not actually accurate. Refunds are down, which means you get tax returns in, and you've been collecting taxes from people all year long, and then from January to April, the state gives money back by way of tax refunds. Those are less than they have been in the last few years. That's a good sign, except that unlike our friends over the city who get some of that revenue, we don't get it. We get shared sales tax, and that is down 3.4% statewide. That's everything from homes in Phoenix to appliances in Lake Havasu to everything sold in the state. For us, it's severance tax that drives that. So on our half-cent sales side, again, it's been less volatile, but the recent trend is somewhat downward as well. Excuse me, this has been more volatile. It's been up and down. The trend, I'm not confident that we're going to stay in the 120 a month. Our average for the first 9 months has been 122,000. Again, I think that's probably optimistic given the trend lines. We knew almost 2 years ago now that there'd be a change in how electricity was taxed for manufacturing, of which mining is. That electricity is no longer taxed as part of the sales tax. The challenge was that our receipts were so good, you could never measure what that hit was. You couldn't just go through and say 500, 500, 500, 500. Now we're at 450. Oh, then it must have been a $50,000 a month hit. The sales tax shared revenue formula is so complex, it's difficult to identify one single stream of revenue, but it has had its effect. So rather than projecting 1.5 million on the half cent and 5.7 on the shared sales tax, I think more conservatively, we project somewhere in the neighborhood of 4.8 to 5 million on the sales tax and probably 1.2 to 1.3 on the half cent. That shakes out in a lot of different areas. Let me switch to the next thing we need to talk about. Granted, some of these numbers I'm going to show you now are very preliminary. We usually receive from the state the I'll make this as big as I can so it makes some sense. We usually receive from the state the TNT rate in the first week, 10 days of April. We just found out that we won't get that till the end of the month. We hope it comes by the end of the month. Last year, we didn't get it till mid-May. I don't know what's going on at DOR, but nevertheless, there you have it. What I've got here is a projection of our property tax receipts. So this, as you recall, in our first budget meeting of the season, we talked about holding at the TNT rate, which we have done for about 10 years. I did contact Kay and say, how often did we exceed that TNT rate? And it was very seldom, except for a stretch of about 4 or 5 years, beginning at around 2009 to about 2014. You recall 2009 was when the property tax began to be hit by the recession of 2008. This
They all
was,
blamed it on me.
well, you know.
Justifiably.
But our assessed evaluation in 2000 for the 2010-11 tax year dropped by 44%. And so at that point, we found ourselves in a position where we could not balance the budget. I wasn't involved in budgeting then. This was on your shoulders. But they exceeded the TNT rate that year and then did the next year, came to the TNT rate the year after that. And then 2 years after that, they exceeded it again. And a couple of those years, they went to the max. Now, the difference between the TNT and the max was fairly small back then. But we would raise roughly 3.8 if we taxed at the TNT rate. This figure is the maximum allowable under state law. So we could go to 6.5. And I'll show you what that looks like in terms of tax rates and the effect on your $100,000 home. There was a change, I believe, in 2021. So anytime you exceed your TNT rate, you have to hold a public hearing. And it has to be published in the newspaper. We do that along with our tentative budget. And you also have to have a roll call vote. So you're each on record saying, yes, I voted for this higher tax rate. The intent is to put pressure on local officials to not just go raising taxes and spending money. Like many things that seem to fit for most of the state, a lot of that doesn't work the same way here because of our unique tax base. But in 2021, they added a provision that said if you're going to exceed your last year's levy by more than 15%, I may have actually calculated this wrong last night, but you have to have a unanimous roll call vote to exceed by more than 15%. So this figure here should be no more than 15% of that figure. And I think I may have figured it off this one last night. It was late when I was doing this, but I discovered this glitch in the law. But anyway, so there's 3 tiers to consider. Legally, the board can go anywhere from 0 to 6.5. There are different things we have to do if we exceed this rate or if we exceed that rate. So and here's the difference. If you go to the 15%, it's roughly almost $600,000 more. If you were to max it out, that would put an additional 2.6 in our coffers. Our pay rate is right around 99%, and it has been since forever. Most of it is 93 to 96% of that in any given year is paid by one taxpayer. The other thing that's changing is that over time, the assessed value, the assessment ratio for mines is dropping over time. That was put into place several years ago. And it'll, I think at some point, it'll come back to legislation, continue to drop it towards the 10% that it is for housing. So let's scroll down here. Our TNT tax rate would go up. You'll see here, and I put this in there because we always look at this. Last year's assessed value, pull this up a little bit more even. Our countywide assessed value was $451 million. This year it went up 22 million to 473.
At least it went up. That's good.
It is good. It is good. And we've seen that drop. 90 million in a year. We've seen it raise 75 million in a year. And there's a lot of factors that go into that, none of which are locally controlled. That's all centrally assessed value. The tax rate at the TNT would be 81, almost 82 cents per hundred. If you exceed the unanimous vote threshold, you'd be at 94, 95 cents. And then if you maxed out, it'd be $1.38. We've always prided ourselves on having the lowest combined tax rate. I have not put in the secondary tax rates on this because the TNT rate may or may not be the maximum allowable rate of 25 cents per hundred. But nevertheless, on our primary property tax rate, this is what it would look like on a bill for $100,000 home. So if you had $100,000 assessed value home, that person's tax rate at the TNT rate would be $82. It would be 94, and change at the unanimous vote threshold. Up here, if you went to the maximum, it would be $1.38, and change at the maximum.
And presently at our tax rate, it'd be $81.18.
Correct.
So the
Over
difference
here.
of that.
Exactly. That's what our tax rate was for the current fiscal year.
About 70 cents.
So, does an additional $60 break the bank for most of our taxpayers? No, it probably doesn't. It does because of like I said, the shifting of assessed values. That burden is shifting slowly but subtly and surely towards homeowners over industry and business. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It makes our business that provides most of what we run on more efficient. But anyway, that's something to keep in mind. The other thing that we always try to keep in mind as we look at this is we also receive a generous beneficiary amount from FMI every year. And I never want to be in the position where I say thank you for that, and I'll take all the rest on the other hand too. So it's a balance. And I think where you strike that balance is in how we manage the expense side of our account. So we're going to talk about wages and what that costs. Some things we cannot avoid. I'll let you know that some counties across the state are looking at 5 to 7 to 10% raises this year. Yavapai County has more money than they're legally allowed to spend. Coconino's in a similar situation. Others, I visited with Dustin Welker last week. They have started their analysis at 1, 2, and 3%. We have also going to give you some 1, 2, and 3% what that costs. For us, the biggest driver in wages is going to be elected officials. And we'll talk about why that is. And
we didn't.
I know. Well, but to be candid, there hasn't been a raise for elected officials in 16 years.
Right.
And so I don't begrudge that, but it is a big chunk of the budget too.
But Derek, also, I think most counties are seeing a positive raise in their revenues.
Right.
There's only I think 3 other counties is what they explained that are seeing negative,
and we are double digits and everybody else is single digit.
Right. And so we're gonna see other counties, because they are increasing their revenues with their economy. They're gonna do some things that we did in previous years that they didn't do. And so I hope people understand that we want to treat our employees well. We want to run this place like a business, but we also want it to be sustainable.
And that harkens back to, we were able to keep ahead of inflation the last 2 years with wages. First with you recall the 2% and $2,000, that kept our lowest paid employees ahead of inflation and everybody else close to or just behind inflation. Last year with the 5%, we were able to stay ahead of inflation. This year, it is unlikely. Inflation was not tamed as much as they had hoped. We're still running at 3.5%, approaching 4% nationwide. And so we've not put any option in front of you, unless you direct us to do so, that keeps up with inflation. We will lose a little ground. this year. One of the counterbalances, our insurance isn't gonna be, you recall, we had 11% increase in insurance last year. It's 2.7-ish this year. Which is helpful, which is very helpful.
But it's still an increase.
It is, and unfortunately, healthcare is the one segment of the economy that has never retreated in over 30 years. It usually outpaces inflation and it always goes up. I always say nothing always goes up except your medical costs. They always go up. But I wanted to plant in your mind that this may be something we have not exceeded our TNT rate. But this is something I think we need to consider. Let me switch to this other thing here.
Well, just quickly, I just wanted to say that I can't imagine this going to the max levy rate, right? I mean, I think that's just the way I think we're wired, right?
Yeah.
I don't think, but I want to get that sweet spot to where if it's at the TNT rate, can we still provide the services that we're providing and take care of our county family, right? Our employees, right? And we want to be able to do that. We want to be able to outpace cost of living. You know, I mean, that's only fair. So trying to find that sweet spot between the max and the TNT rate, it sounds like that other is the unanimous vote threshold.
Correct.
And maybe it isn't that. I mean, that is a big jump, but you know, I just don't think there's any way that I think we're going to go to the max. So I mean,
Well,
you know,
and I don't either,
Right.
but I wanted to sort of set the outer limits.
Yeah.
So that you can think about that. And I don't want to show up here on June 18th saying, hey, by the way, I'm gonna extort you into voting for something you're very uncomfortable with because we haven't talked about it.
Yeah.
I wanted to, and the next thing I'm gonna show you, it sort of lays out where we were a year ago and kind of how it looks now. But that's exactly right, Supervisor Campbell, is we need to talk about what, where that sweet spot is, because whereas I don't think we're going to the max, I'm not sure we can stay at the TNT rate either.
all right. I understand that.
But Derek, and I hope that whatever we do, we're looking at the future. And yes, I want to take care of our employees, but I also realize we don't know what that mine's gonna do. I mean, this severance tax, their expenses just keep going up. And unless copper starts going up, this severance tax might be it's been really good for us for most of the time, but it might be an anchor around our neck.
You are correct. My inclination is that we're not gonna settle in that $394 per month. I think it's gonna rise a bit. But we budget once a year. I understand, and Mr. Campbell can tell us, but I understand they budget their quarterly. They're constantly adjusting their revenues. They're constantly adjusting their expenses. And so, and they have a lot more levers to pull than we do. And you will never hear me say, you should run your business this way. They are the experts. And they, more than anybody, they answer to shareholders who are demanding, because they can sell your stock tomorrow morning on E-Trade and they're done with you. And so they will be very responsive on the expense side, but you are correct. I think we take a very conservative approach and make sure we can live within the means that are available.
And we well know that their production is down also because they're struggling to keep employment. For the biggest factor ever is the housing. There's no place to live. So,
And those are things that, I mean, obviously, we're all aware by now, they kicked out a $750 stipend, trying to get people to stay or come. That's a great attraction. There's the rideshare programs. You know, you can't hardly go from here to Saffron, not see those enterprise vans full of people. They are fully aware of their labor needs and doing all that they can. We are glad to be partners where we can to provide some housing.
But it behooves us to be conservative, as we've always tried to be, and take care of our employees. But, you know, sometimes there's just years you pull your belt and you don't like it, but that's what you gotta do.
And this is gonna be one of those years. Now, what you see in front of you here is our major sources of revenue. What is not here, and I think this is important, is one-time money. I don't have any ARPA in here. I don't have any of the, what they call LATCF, did I get that right? CTF. I always get the C and the T backwards. That's one-time money.
Contingency fund.
That's it. There you go. But this would be taking the TNT rate, estimating five million on the shared sales tax, 1.5 on the half cent, which probably is a little bit high. 1.1 for PILT, which is probably pretty close, what we expect there. There'll be a little bit of SRS money, about 300,000 for roads, but that's not our general fund. We get a state appropriation. This is in the base of the budget. Now, these two I always worry about because when things get really tight down there, then they usually don't touch the base budget. They look at one-time spending, they look at other things that are above the base. But when things get really tight, they start looking at the base. So, that's not quite $1 million, but it's still for us, that's a chunk. This is our estimated cash carry forward. These are all rounded numbers. Last year, that number was 11.5. And it reflected some of our ARPA money from the year before. But we've carried a fairly healthy cash balance the last 2 to 3 years. And we've known that. Renee and I have talked about this several times about our cash balance. Some of this also encapsulates some of that federal COVID related money as well.
But does that 8.8 include any ARPA or COVID related monies now?
From last year, yes, because we moved some of that into our general fund.
Right.
By way of the ways that the law allows us to do so. So yes, it does have some of that.
But we also paid down our debt, so.
Yeah.
So we didn't have that interest, and so we don't have some of those expenses that we've had previous years, and that's what we wanted to do with that ARPA money, is set us up. So in future years, we weren't carrying that debt, we weren't paying that debt load.
Yeah.
We saved ourselves,
The state would have done the same
yeah,
thing.
we saved ourselves a couple of $1 million over time by having paid that debt. And that's your credit card. You paid zero, you quit paying interest. These fund transfers in and out, this $2 million overwhelmingly is represented by the FMI contribution, the stability fund. The transfers out represent stuff that's going to our road department. It's going to our capital improvement fund. They're set up as separate funds. And then, of course, we've got these three funds. The debt retirement, if you recall, that's if we stopped business today, that allows us to pay off the cars and road graders and stuff that we've already contracted for. It's not to pay the current year's debt, that's built into our budget. And then, of course, the future stability fund is if our revenues continue to drop, it's like a rainy day with some strings attached. The other one we created just last year, and that's the Future Capital Projects Fund. That's trying to capture and set aside some of that one-time money so that we don't end up spending it on day-to-day expenses. That was our attempt to do that. I will tell you, as we get down to the expense side of this, we may not be able to keep that full 2 million there. But I want you to be aware of that early. Now, there are several other areas where we know, Renee and I have talked about this, where, for example, we have had the luxury the last few years to build up our contingency fund to the point where it should be, and it may be a little bit higher than it should be. So we've got some wiggle room there. We've got some wiggle room in some of our other funds. So even though we're running at a current revenue deficit of almost $800,000, we're going to finish the year okay. But we can't spend next year like we did last year.
And Derek, one thing on the PILT, and PILT's been reauthorized, but if Secure Rural Schools isn't, that will be a dollar per dollar cut, and especially up in the Northwest where they have a lot of timber sales and stuff. Unless they up PILT, we will see a reduction in PILT in the future years if they don't reallocate Secure Rural Schools, because those counties that are receiving Secure Rural School funds will come in and get the PILT. So our share of PIL will go down,
Like by 300,000 or something?
400,000.
Okay.
Correct, but at least for us, by about 300,000, because that SRS is split between us and the schools.
Right.
We use ours for roads, and by law, it has to go to schools and roads. And so we take the first 300 and split the rest between Morenci and Duncan based on enrollment population.
So if the secure rule schools does not get reauthorized, then that 300,000-ish would come out of that. bill.
PIL, yes.
It would.
It come
So,
out
so we'd be looking at 700,000, 800,000. But yeah, and there are strong headwinds to reauthorize that. I mean, like I say, you got Northwest pushing it, but take a school like Duncan, where you've got some problem with funding coming through the state Department of Education with problems, and you throw an additional, take out another couple $100,000 in vote money and all this, SRS money. And you've got a lot of schools in the same situation are saying you can't undercut us that way. Politically, I think it's good. But as you know, there are some very strong headwinds in the country right now saying we've got to get our national debt under control. And they are well founded. The trouble is when you say, where do you cut it? And nobody's willing to say,
Stop
go ahead and
spending.
take mine, but everybody knows we've got a spending problem.
And they've had SRS in the last two budget, and they haven't advanced it. So I just,
Yeah.
so we know, and hopefully we'll work on that.
Okay, let's switch real quick to,
So far, Cinema and Kelly have both supported it, so.
So this is a very simplistic way of looking at wages. What I asked Renee to do, and then Austin to layer on top of it is, what would a 1%, 2%, or 3% cost or wage increase cost us as a county? You'll notice that top line is elected officials. So you recall 2 years ago, actually it was 3 years ago, they passed legislation that all county elected officials would receive a $20,000 per year raise. Those would implement in the January after that election. So Superior Court judge, Superior Court clerk, those kind of folks, it implemented January after their last election. So we've already absorbed those entire $20,000 increases for those individuals. The rest, county attorney, board, assessor, everybody else, those will start come January. So it's a $90,000 tag. Why is it 165? Because the EOR, the Elected Official Retirement Fund, is in such bad shape. Our match for that is 76%. So for every dollar we pay an elected official, we pay 76 cents into the retirement fund. It is structurally, it's built in a way that nobody's incentivized to make it healthy, but they've already been up to the Arizona Supreme Court and said you can't not fund it. And so, you're almost to the point where you're paying dollar for dollar in and it goes out to a retiree. But nevertheless, those are things that are way beyond our control. That's simply what it costs. If you take the entirety of the rest of the employees who are being paid out of the general fund of 1%, this includes our EREs, a 1% raise would cost us general fund wide about 62,000. 2%, 124, and 3%, 186. So the total bill for all of that is down here. And like I say, it's hard to begrudge the elected officials increase. They are the face of every organization. When people call and get cranky about elections, they call Sherry. They don't call our staff. When there's heat to be taken in another office, it's the elected. And that 16 years, if you don't do something about that, pretty soon nobody wants to take the job. And so there's a reason they raised it, and I support it. But we recognize it has budget impact. So I'm not asking you to make a selection today. If you would like us to do a 4% or 5%, a 0% wage increase for everybody would still run us 165,000.
But at the end of the day, the difference between the 3% and the 5% would impact the tax rate by what?
Very good.
Right.
Very good. Just do that, just.
Run a 4 and 5.
Numbers, we can see the numbers.
Okay,
Derek, please.
okay.
Personally, I would start at 3. And go up from there. That's my opinion.
Well, and frankly, you know, that's 352 minus 227, that's about $130,000 between 1 and 2. We can find that. I know that Chairman Lunt always talks about sustainability and that. Last year, we talked about 2 things. One, can we keep paying this wage going forward? And can we retain the critical pieces of our skilled force that we can't afford to lose? And we were able to answer both last year. There were a couple positions got left behind and we're gonna try and address those, but they will be very, very targeted. But yes, can we pay that 3% this year? And of course, once you pay it, it's there forever. We've all lived here in Copper Country. We're in a current trough. It's not gonna always be this way, but we wanna make sure we don't spend ourselves broke while we're down.
Right.
But yes, we can add, would you like us to do a 4 and a 5?
Yes, please.
Yeah,
Okay,
to see the numbers, yeah.
then we'll run that at 4 and 5 and give you an idea of what that runs. So. But that's the wage part that I wanted you to be aware of.
I still go back. Our main source of revenue is the severance tax. And expenses keep going up. Inflation, that they thought they'd curb it. And I just, you know, we're not gonna see that unless the world market copper really goes up a heck of a lot, because that's what we're basing it on, and it's been strong.
Yeah.
It's
Very
been strong, but the expenses are so high against that, and they're not gonna come down. Their expenses aren't gonna come down, so that severance tax is, we've seen this is Richard. We've seen the big hump.
Well, and I am a huge believer, that economies are self-healing, which doesn't mean it doesn't hurt, but they eventually balance themselves out. They do. If you're a family like we were, when we had all our kids home, we could do 6 to 7 gallons of milk a week. I used to tease Richard and his brother about running a pipe straight from the dairy to pop up in our kitchen sink, because we went through milk like calves. But when things got tight, and whenever I heard Richard saying, hey, the price of milk is up, the peers drank less milk. That's simply what we did.
Yeah.
did.
But
And so economies do heal themselves, but getting from where you're at to where it's in balance again can be a very painful experience.
But I don't wanna ask our employees to make less next year than they did this year. You know, with the cost of living, right? If we look at what that cost of living number is. I mean, to be able to offset that with something, even if we're talking a 5%, that's realistically, they're probably at the end of the day, getting a 1 or 1.5% raise from last year. You know what I mean?
I do.
So that's a balance. I'm not saying that we need to do that, but I'm saying that we need to look at that big picture, because we don't want our employees to be making less this coming year than they did last.
And this has been very good, because what it allows us to do is to go through and really with a fine tooth comb, say, where can we trim other parts of our budget?
Right.
What do we put off? What do we not do? We're gonna talk about one project that is not gonna yield short-term results, but I want us to start thinking about in terms of long-term results. Like paying down our PSPRS debt. This is one where I think we can realize some savings. The other is, I think we look seriously at our CIP, and I think we maybe take a year and slow down. Make sure that we can maintain what we've got. I want to talk about incarceration services. I think I've let you know, I've been looking at this. We've been looking at numbers. Literally, I get numbers every single day on our inmate population. And what we're discovering, what I've discovered is that there is some real opportunity to look at this differently, reimagine how we provide incarceration services. And I think, eye-popping savings. We started tracking in March 2022. We've got complete data through February of 2024. So that's our 2-year study period. We continue to receive data daily. And the data includes not only how many folks we have in our facility, but also how often arrests are made. And that becomes important when we start talking about alternatives. So overwhelmingly, we have an arrest made about 3 times a week. Some weeks we have an arrest every day. Some weeks we go for 7, 8, 9, 10 days and no arrest at all. Usually it's a arrest a day, and it might be a couple fighting. So there's 2 people coming at the same time, but it's 1 event a day. On rare occasion, we'll have something happen at 10 in the morning and then something at 4 in the afternoon and then at 10 at night. But those are the outliers. And so why does that become important? Because when we talk about outsourcing, how often we need to run people becomes a question. Our inmate count through the study period, which is that 2-year period, was 6.9 inmates per day. And so you'll see that some of the analysis is based on that average. It has been ticking up beginning in October. It hit 7, stayed around 7 for November, December, ticked up to almost 9 in January. And then in the current month, as of yesterday, I didn't include today's number, we're about 13.5 inmates per day. You're going to see as we go through this, it doesn't change the overall analysis much if we're anywhere under 20 inmates. In terms of counting inmates and analyzing costs, an inmate is an inmate. That's not to dehumanize the people who are there, but in terms of costs, it's a unit. However, when you look at the nature of who's currently incarcerated, it does begin to change your forecasting model. So that big uptick that we've seen since last fall is overwhelmingly probationers. People who are already on probation for something, and there's a variety of reasons why a person may be there. It may be somebody who is exhausted their probation options and they're on their way to Department of Corrections. It may be somebody who needs a timeout from their life for a period of time to wean off of a substance abuse habit. And it may be somebody who simply, as part of the reform process, needs to spend some time incarcerated. But in the last 2 months, about 10 of our population has been people on probation. In other words, our regular jail population from day in, day out police activity is about 3 to 6 or 7. In other words, that dynamic hasn't changed. It's been about the same. You also see that for those who are arrested, overwhelmingly, they are released the next morning. Now, there's reasons for that, and you'll find within the system disagreement of whether or not they should be released or not be released. In terms of analyzing the cost, that doesn't matter much as to why they're released. It's only that most of them come in, say, at 9 o'clock at night, and by 8 o'clock next morning or 10 o'clock next morning, they're back to their jobs and their lives. There are some that we probably shouldn't hang on to longer because of the nature of the crime they're accused of. And there are others for whom that overnight stay will correct maybe a lifetime of problems. But the static population has run consistently between 3 and 6 inmates for well over 2 years. There have been periods of time when we had nobody in jail from anywhere. There was a period of time for about 10 or 11 days where we had 1 person in jail, and they were not ours. They were a trade with the neighboring Graham County, which we did from time to time. But nevertheless, that static population has not changed. Where do I think we end up? When I was county attorney from 96 to 2016, our static population was probably 20 to 25. That was pretty regular. There's been several significant changes in the criminal justice system that tell me that's too high. I don't think we're gonna get there again. You take something like marijuana, probably 60% of the cases we had where people were in jail began with a traffic stop and they smell marijuana. That's no longer a reason to stop or arrest anymore. And that changes not only marijuana incarceration, but it changes a lot of other crimes that would derive from having discovered marijuana. There's also changes in judicial and policing policies. We simply don't arrest the way we used to. And courts are turning hard towards less incarceration, less punitive, more reform. So we're seeing even our own system here, a greater emphasis on drug treatment as opposed to drug incarceration. All of which comes down to we're not putting as many people in. Judge Stauffer used to use a program that worked really well with people who are addicted to methamphetamine, and that is, we're going to force you to get off this garbage. And so she would incarcerate them as a condition of probation, and that could be a month to 2 to 3 months, and they would not be getting out until their counselor, their probation officer, and them all agreed they were ready to go out again. Well, that increased jail population. We don't do that anymore. And so those things change our predicted population. And we're not gonna ever be able to exactly predict. Even during that period of 20 to 25, there was a time we were running at 40. We were double bunking and had people from Grand County over here with us. But I think the new normal is probably gonna settle into the 8 to 12 range, including probation officer or in probationers, as well as the day-to-day police activity. Maybe wrong, but that's my best guess. Why have I been doing this now on a cost per inmate per day? Because that's what is sort of a hotel charge that if so for example, right now, Graham County takes in inmates from Gila County. They are not able to hire the detention officers to staff their facility. So and I don't know what the current count is, but they were sending 20 to 30 people a day over to Graham County. The U.S. Marshal Office has a contract with Graham County. Those were both being charged $75 a day. And so that was the basis of measurement and analysis that I used to cover this. You can look at budgeted costs or fixed costs, and you can understand what your total cost to provide that service is, but it doesn't measure efficiency very well. And so if we budget as we have for the last 2 years, right about $2.2 million for the incarceration facility, that's the same whether we have one person or whether we have 25 people. And so you look at, and I've got here the FY23 budgeted as well as the actual. The budget is perhaps more accurate way to look at it. I'll explain here on the next slide. But essentially, we're budgeting both last year and the current year a little over $2.2 million, or roughly $6,000 a day to keep the facility open, whether there's anybody in it or whether there's nobody in it. What's our current cost per inmate? The blue numbers in the middle are the average inmate count for that month. So July of 2022, we had 5.94 inmates on average in our facility. You take our cost that we budgeted for that, and like I say, your actual cost will be reduced because you have vacancy savings. Sometimes you budget for items you don't end up needing to purchase, and so it's probably going to be lower. But once you budget $2.2 million, unless the board comes in later and makes a budget adjustment, that money's locked up. Those dollars can't be used to pay for roads or CIP projects. It's locked up in our budget.
Derek, on this daily cost, is that just goes in there, that goes, what costs are included in there? Detention officers or just people, or just employees that work at the jail? What costs are you including in that? Does that include anything?
Everything that we could identify that applies. So that's detention officers, that's maintenance on the facility, that's meals, that's outsourced meals, that's inmate medical. That is transportation vehicles used to transport people here.
And that's fair. I just wanted to know
Yeah.
what those costs were.
And we tried to be as comprehensive as we could. Have we missed some? Perhaps, but we pulled from not just the sheriff's 019 budget, but every other budget that incarceration services touch on. So you'll see that if we have, roughly 6 people in jail, it's costing us about $1,000 per inmate per day to keep them there. And you can see as the inmate count goes down, the cost per inmate per day goes up. We bottomed out in August of 23. It was running us $2,200 a day for everybody we had in jail. And you can't very well say, okay, we have 3 detention officers and 2 control room operators, but we only have 1 person in jail. Most of you go home. And we run a pretty lean operation. I'm not critical of the operation. In fact, they've won some awards for what they've been doing. But you have to have a minimum staff in order to keep that running. And as with most organizations, it's your people that are your main cost driver. But you can see the inverse relationship here. That's what our average daily cost looks like graphically. It's going down as our inmate population. But you'll notice we never go below that $500 a day line. Might we get close to that? Maybe, but the statistics tell me that it's not likely to sustain at the 20 to 25 person level. This is our actual cost as opposed to budgeted costs in FY23 because we've got complete numbers there. Again, you know, at roughly 6 people, we're actually spending $860 as opposed to $1,000. But that's what it's costing us in our lowest month, which is not captured here. We would still be just under $2,000 a day. I don't think we're going to be that low most of the time either. Three people in jail. Graphically, that's what it looks like on actual expenses. And we talked about this, and we'll cover this very quickly. The budgeted costs, once those dollars are locked up, they are locked up in our budget. And when I say offer, I know what Graham County has charged the Gila County and the U.S. Marshal's Office. Dustin Welker and I began sort of, you know, joking with each other. We've had various levels of seriousness conversation about this, but $75 a day is what they are charging right now. But if you were to take an average of 10 inmates per day at $75, your bill is only $273,000 as opposed to $2.2 million. We know a year, right? A year, correct. We know that is not the entire cost, right? And we're trying very hard, and that's where I think a shift in focus will help us define some of this. We have, well, I'll cover that in a second. You're gonna have transportation personnel. You're gonna have transportation fleet. We would have to purchase a few more vehicles to make sure we got something reliable all the time. Potential cost of temporary holding. Do you set up your facility where you keep somebody who comes at 11 o'clock at night, keep them until 8 o'clock in the morning? Those are things to consider. Technological upgrades that would allow for remote hearings in another facility. I know Graham County has it built in on their end. We may need to look at our court system and say we need to beef up our ability to remote. Inmate medical is not going to go away. Graham County is not going to say, we'll take your person, and when they have a heart attack, we'll cover them. And nor would we expect them to. There are others that we probably haven't identified yet. Our cost per inmate per day at 10 inmates is roughly $616 a day. So 75 versus 616. 2.2 million versus 275,000. We have not looked at this carefully, but we just had a discussion on inflation. A facility back we looked at it 10 years ago would probably run us 12 million. I think we would be lucky to get away with 20 million, even if we downsize the facility from a 40-bed facility to 25. The cost of design, the cost of construction, and I'll be honest with you, those are just wild-eyed guesses based on what we've looked at in the past. Interest rates, we did some study last night on current construction, commercial type interest rates. We would actually go out to the bond market to float a bond. So we'd probably get a little bit better rate because we have a good bond rating and the state has a good bond rating. But you're still looking at 6 to 15% over a 20-year life of a construction project. Once you build a new facility, you're not going to likely save a whole lot on your day-to-day operating expenses. Like I say, we run a pretty lean operation. They build jails now in a pod fashion, so you have a single control center. You can see pretty much all the cells, And so that makes it more efficient, and they build them in a way that moving inmates from here to there, even to court, like a lot of facilities are putting justice courts in the same building. So you can, there's some money to be saved there, but you're not gonna find that it's gonna be a whole lot, because we run so small and lean as it is. We talked about this, the offering incarceration is $75. What I've tried to do, is say, well, how much would that additional run us? And do you double it? If we take into the transportation personnel and fleet, do you go $125 more a day? At 25. So this next analysis is basically, what does it cost us if we add that on? Then we had to look at that twice. So this is based on our FY24 budget. And you'll see that that black number is what if it costs us double, $75 to grant, $75 to cover all of our own expenses. How many inmates would we have to keep in jail to bring our daily cost per inmate down to $150? And we're at 41. We'd have to have 41 people in jail to equal the cost of $150 a day. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if you say it costs us an additional $125 a day, what does that run us for a total bill daily of $200 a day? We'd have to have almost 31 people in jail every day to have our costs equal the outsourced cost. If you went all the way up to $300 a day, we would have to have 20 to 21 people in jail every day to have our local costs equal the outsourced cost. Now, I will tell you the 75, 125, and 225 are soft numbers. We really need a diverse and robust discussion about what that would really run us. We have focused on building or remodeling. We have not really looked at the outsource option. But like I say, our highest number we've got on the books right now is 13.5. We're still 7 people below our break-even average at $300 a day. We have an aging facility. We're all aware of that. That's not been a secret. It's 45 years old, maybe even 46 now. The maintenance goes up every year. Things like replacing automatic doors and automatic door locks are tremendously expensive. Even toilets. If you recall, we remodeled a room, holding cell a few years ago to make it as suicide proof as possible. That was nearly $100,000 venture by the time we bought toilets and shower heads and light fixtures and everything else. They're expensive. But this gives you an idea of what it would cost on operating expenses alone. That's not building a new jail. Operating expenses alone. These are my best rough estimate at break-even points for these inmate counts. A lot of next questions, and I'll just cover them. There's a longer list than this. How long do we have to make the decision? How long can we continue to make the building work? The structure of the building is pretty sound. It's built on a good place, and so the bricks standing on top of the bricks are in good shape. Question is everything else, from plumbing to electric to the doors and everything else. Is there a realistic path forward with funding new facilities? So we don't have the cash to just build one. We would have to bond. And because of the amount, we'd have to go to voters and say, will you vote for this? I think it's going to be a tough sell to go to voters and say, we average about 6 people in jail a day. Let's spend $20 million and build a new one. I tend to see glass half empty on these kinds of things, but it's a sell that we'd have to make. So is there really, and I say utilization rates there, how many people do we have? What does it cost to build one? We need to answer, where would you put it? What's the design look like? Do we go somewhere towards the middle of the population centers in the freeway area? All those questions. Cost of remodel, and what's the lifespan of a remodel? Do we change the facility to downsize it and remodel it so you've got programming areas and reentry program areas for a smaller population? What would it take to staff transportation? Do we need 5, 6, 10, 12 people? Would we need additional cars? What would those costs be? Could on-call staff be utilized so that you cut down your pay? one of the things we talked about, if you have only roughly 3 arrests per week, that's why I begin to look at that is, could you then multi-use that personnel to provide security in courthouse? Could you multi-use that personnel to provide transportation to juveniles down at Pinal Camp with cross training? There's simply questions that need to be answered. Our defense bar comes out of Grand County. Would there be advantages that would encourage them to stay with us if they weren't having to travel up here as often? In other words, they could go visit their client down there, remote in on a court hearing and so forth. Could you lower your liability costs? Jail are one of the, well, sheriff's offices and roads are their 2 biggest liability drivers in all of county government. Could the facility be used for something else? Could we negotiate a long-term stable arrangement with our neighbor that benefits them? I know that they know they overbill. They would love to have a steady stream of income. If we took our 10 people estimated and put them into their jail population, they wouldn't know they were there. They wouldn't have to hire a single other person. The only incremental cost would be the cost of meals, which they do through a contractor. It would run them a couple of dollars a day per inmate to do. And that should be built into the cost that would be with us. What we wouldn't want to find ourselves in is a situation where we have a 5-year deal, and at the end of 5 years, costs triple or quadruple. So this would be structured in a way that there's a built-in cost inflator. There are, if after a year we look and say, hey, our average is 12, not 10, there could be a balloon payment and maybe a restructure to a population of 12, not 10. There's lots of aspects of that need to be looked at. And then what other disruptions would a transportation facility cause to our law enforcement function? Would they end up needing to run to Safford and put people in jail, or could we make that work with transportation staff? They are questions that need to be robustly discussed and not just, with the bean counters like myself, but with policymakers. Where do we go from here? I think we shift the focus of our jail committee away from construction and towards outsourcing and start using our best efforts. I think it would be nearly impossible not to cut our $2.2 million budget at least in half. I just almost can't envision a way we couldn't cut at least half of that expense. I think we can achieve 60 to 70% savings. But until some of those questions are answered, we won't know for certain. But I looked at this several ways, and I don't know how we can't cut our costs in half. And when you look at this as an incarceration service, you begin to be able to say, how can we redefine how we provide that service? So the question you asked Supervisor Campbell, how do we provide the services and what tax rate? Obviously, if you can cut permanent spending, like we did with out-of-county tuition, like we've done with our interest on PSPRS, that's permanent savings that goes on in perpetuity. That's sustainable. This is sustainable. It is an entirely different cultural shift in how we look at this service we provide. And make no doubt, it is a service. Sometimes people need to take a time out from their life, and this is part of that. But those are some of the things we do. I think we need to focus on this as opposed to other options and see if we can define that and put harder dollar estimates on it. So I realize that's not going to affect our budget discussion for the current fiscal year. But if the board said, let's switch today, I think we're probably a year away from actually making the switch. By the time we negotiate contracts, figure out the transportation needs, it's going to take a while to put things in motion to make it work. But you do look at perpetual savings going forward. So I want to put that in front of you. So you think about it.
Another thing, Derek, is that, you think, if you do build, then, I mean, this thing's 45 years old. Of course, government, they use appreciation and stuff like that, but your costs are going to go up.
Your maintenance goes up.
Yeah. I mean, your maintenance will come down and stuff, but because you build a $20 billion facility, it goes up, your cost.
Well, you'd have to have had your head firmly buried under a rock and deep in the sand to not look at what inflation has done over the last 3 years alone. Let alone look back 4, 5, 6 years. Everything from two befores to dishes to groceries are running more. And like I say, that it's tamed, but we're not down to the normal inflation rate of 2 point something.
Well, my 2 cents, obviously, we've talked about this for a few years, you know, and because of the building the jail, the cost of that, costs of the refurbishment of that jail, there's nobody that can make any sense in my head of why we would pay 5 to 7 times the amount of money to house that same inmate, rather than outsourcing that. So I think that's the glaring difference in cost. And I you know, we talk about the technology piece. I mean, all right, well, lucky we had COVID, because that really made us, forced us to improve that technology to where they can do court hearings over the phone and from anywhere. And so I think that's part of the infrastructure that's already been put together. I'm sure there's some sharpening of that needs to happen, but the technology is there. We already use it here. I know that they use it, you know, on the other side. But I can't make any sense why we wouldn't go down that road. I mean, the numbers show that we would easily save the county $1 million a year. I mean, that's yeah, forever. That makes total sense. Yes, I think there's some parts about the transportation there, who's doing what and how often do you have to do it. But I can't even imagine that would move the needle much. You know what I mean? I mean, obviously we wouldn't need all the staff that we have now in the detention office, you know what I mean? But some of those might be coming up from Safford anyway, you know, and so those are things that are uncomfortable to talk about, but we need to talk about. But maybe our first step is to say, well, anytime we get over 5, you know, we max ours to 5, and anybody else, we go ahead and start that process of transporting. Because I think the experience and the knowledge of knowing how we're going to go about that, I think would be beneficial in making the long-term decision to, you know, draw that line in the sand. That's why.
Plus, by doing that, it gives us data.
Yes.
Based on what the projected cost or the cost that doing this would.
Right.
Before we become completely
Yeah,
set.
exactly. So I'm thinking, I guess, take baby steps towards that. But right now, I'm making that decision to say, let's max ours out at 5 and start doing that. You know, now, anytime we exceed that over 5 at our facility. That's my opinion.
One of the things you point out is about personnel, and you'll notice almost every time that you gather, we're hiring a new detention officer. It is, for as long as I've been with the county, the highest turnover rate position in the county. And that's because it's often a starter position. Someone comes out of, you know, this is the first job they get, and when they get a better opportunity, they go for it. But attrition would address a lot of that. And so, not all of it, perhaps, but a lot of that.
That's the reason I'm thinking, instead of, you know, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time, right? I mean, so let's take baby steps towards that, so we can gather that data to try to figure out, you know, I think that's what we do now.
Derek, how many detention officers do you have? Off the top of my head.
Is that budgeted or?
Budgeted, I don't know how many we have currently. I think there's
But
12 officers, 2 sergeants.
detention officers, control room staff, and some leadership. Yeah. So,
But if there's negatives to this, I'd love to hear about it. I don't-
well, and that's frankly where we need to have an robust discussion. I do not want to plunge us off the cliff. Like you know, we went back and we did so much number crunching on the out of county tuition, but the same with PSPRS. We analyzed bonding for it. We analyzed, which some of our neighbors did. We analyzed, where can we get the cash? Where to, and it was fortuitous. We had some of that COVID related money, but we looked at that every which way. I too want to know what am I missing? What did we not think about? What costs have I not accounted for? And I'm certain that there are some there. But I think if we focus as our solution to our incarceration, services, we'll start to flesh those questions out.
But it won't be 5 to 7 times the amount.
Or in some cases, 13 or 14.
Right. I'm being conservative, but.
Yeah, and that's even if you simply buy beds you don't use.
Right.
Simply so we have the guarantee of availability. We may strike a deal at 10 beds and some days only have 3 people there. And other days we may have 13. And so, but if there's a set amount that they know they'll receive, there's a set amount we know we can budget on. That's much easier to manage financially than up and down. But yes, those are the questions I absolutely want feedback on so we can flesh that out. With your direction, that we're gonna try and move this conversation back.
Move
We
forward.
need to move it.
Okay. 2 more quick things and then I'm done with the budget. One, we have ordered an ambulance 2 years ago. We believe it's being manufactured right now. That we've been told that before and it wasn't, but we expect delivery by July, August. Those are $250,000 investments. And when you resell them, they are not worth anything. However, Tony has suggested, and I think it's a really sharp idea, and that is that we start buying a chassis and then we refurbish the box that goes on top of it. So that we take our basic ambulance structure, the things you need, the bandages, the paddles, whatever goes in an ambulance, and that goes from one chassis to the next. So that as we take the car out underneath it, we put the box back on top of the new one, and we refurbish the box as we go. Now, they won't last forever, but we think we can get at least 2 or 3 chassis out of a box. We've been notified that there may be such a chassis available in Texas. We're trying to find that out. If there is, we may come back to you and say, let's pursue this. It takes down the 2-year timeline. Because if we order an ambulance today, we're looking at 2 years before we get one. And that's every provider is telling us the same thing, which is good. Because as we learned a couple weeks ago, at least it's not a haul truck, which is the 4-year lead time. But we can cut our lead time down. And then I think we move towards a model that is lower cost and lower change out time. So I wanted to alert you to that. They're just expensive. And if we can cut our costs and cut our lead time, that's something we need to look at.
So make sure I understand, you're saying just buy the chassis and we'll transfer the box, 2 or 3 chassis, so a box might last us 15 years instead of 5.
Yeah, and I don't have the exact details. Matt can help us develop that, but the concept is yes.
I understand.
You keep changing the car out from underneath it and put the box on the new one. And we buy chassis that are consistent enough that we can do that.
Yeah.
So
Trucks. Right. Yeah, that sounds good.
the last thing I want to cover with you is, and this is again, on your radar. But we're not gonna solve it today. And that is our CIP for next year. We're gonna go through it real quick. So I know it's hard to read and I can't make it much bigger. This was our tier. I have it called tier 1, it's actually tier 2. This is our second tier projects that we're looking at in the future, year or two down the road. I will distribute this to you so you can each look at it. Some of this we're gonna take off. Some of it has been rolled into other projects. The dance floor, for example, was here because of the economies of scale and the money we had available, we moved it up. Well, that because the wind took part of our dance floor down and we were kind of needing to do something. But I want you to look at this. I also want you to consider what else is on your mind. We've talked about Ward Canyon. Do we upgrade that to a field with grass on it, or 2 fields with grass? Can we take one of them, turn it into parking, turn the other one into a higher quality field? Chairman Lunt has mentioned before that the floor in the, we'll call building D, or the exhibit building, the old building there, that floor's caused us problems for years. It gets wet, so the paint we're repainting them over for the fair every year. We're trying to get to the bottom of why that's there, but one way you get to the bottom is you dig to the bottom of the floor and find out what's there. Are there other projects? Again, I'm gonna strongly recommend to the board that we slow down, that we're not as ambitious in the coming year, both financially as well as, we need to bite off what we can actually chew. We were right at the edge of it and maybe a little bit beyond what we could actually accomplish. I appreciated the way we approached it, but I would like you to be thinking about, are there projects that you would like to add to this? We know we are still working, Supervisor Gomez is leading a lot of this. We are still working actively on housing options. We've got Hayden LaFoy working with the state on specific site. That one becomes, in the ideal world, we do a lot of prep work and somebody swoops in and buys it and develops it. That'd be great. But I'd ask you to be thinking about, I put a feeler out to department heads and elections and we haven't got anything back. I really think it's a credit to our departments. They recognize the situation as well. We've had a couple of people come in and say, there's some things I'd like to do, but this probably isn't the year. Kudos to them and so forth. We still have some one-time money we can work with. But I'd like you to, if you have ideas or suggestions, if you just let me know, we can put them on and analyze them and develop our tier 1 projects for next year.
Is the North Annex still on the capital improvement plan anywhere? We talked
Up
about,
in blue,
yeah,
it is.
I know it's almost impossible and
It's
gone down that
relegated to
road.
tier 3, which is more aspirational, but maybe we start having some of those discussions again up there.
I mean, just looking at the, still continuing to look for available property, right? That's the only thing.
And to purchase may be awfully expensive.
Yeah,
Well,
so it is to rent,
to lease is not cheap either,
right?
but you raise a good point. So it's on our list, it's on tier 3, and we have not had a serious discussion about it for probably 8 years.
Is that we could be forced into that at any point,
We could,
you know what I mean?
yes.
So just don't want to lose focus.
And Derek on the fairgrounds. Now we have that building and I know we've got the existing, but I would next year. I think the quicker we can get the inside facilities where we're separating people from animals. And I appreciate what you said. Lindsay's looking at a design where safety is a big factor because, we live in a litigious world. So I hope we finish some of those and then, I hope the Loma Linda ball fields, the Duncan ball fields, we get those done next year. I mean, they're not, now we've got plans and stuff, but let's get them built and let's build them well. And then let's take care of them.
And that may be simply our ambition next year is to finish up the loose ends we didn't quite get done this year. I don't know. But if you have ideas, you can email me or text me or just stop by and chat with me. I'd love to put them on our consideration board. Like I say, as an overall concept, I'd ask that we take a cautious approach this year in particular, just so we don't want to build ourselves where we can't keep up with maintenance without planning, but also for all the other things we've talked about, we need to try to take a conservative approach.
And I don't know, but I finish what and do it well.
Try not to pile on anymore so that we can get those finished.
And that ends my budget work session.
Keep pushing. Let them stop. It's hard to get me started.
Yeah. There you go.
We covered an awful lot of ground and I appreciate your patience. We had originally thought about having a budget work session next week, but we'd reserved that for the sheriff to perhaps present whatever he may wish to present. And as you know, his family struck with tragedy. So I think we will forego next week's budget work session and And we will reach out, see if he's got some thoughts. He may wish to have us simply develop it, and if that's okay, we can do that too. But, next week is too soon.
I would agree, but that I also on to help our staff, the staff that truly does the budget. I wouldn't put that deadline too far, and I agree.
We can't afford to.
We
Too
can't
late in the
afford to do
season.
it, and we're not gonna be doing it like we've done in previous year in June.
Right.
And so the staff knows, and I know we tasked Renee with getting together with that, but we have to be realistic on that too.
Okay, and we will. We are more cognizant of that than anybody, because I cannot say enough for the help that Austin and Renee have been. They've taken over good chunks of this year and helped me manage so much of the minutia, and I appreciate that. It's been good working as a team.
And you know what, Derek, I think this board loves the succession attitude, because there's not any of us that aren't indispensable, and the more we can cross train, the better and stronger we are.
Don't say it too eagerly, but I agree with you.
Always helps.
Yep. Okay, that's all I have on that item. Thank you for your indulgence and patience.
Thank you, and as always, this board appreciates the staff and what you guys do, especially during the budget. I mean, I know sometimes we get quite demanding, and as we should, but I hope you guys never feel like you're unappreciated. We appreciate you. So with that, there being no, go ahead.
We still have item 8.
I'm
Be hitting that hammer.
Let's take a break now.
I moved through item 8A very quickly. You heard our budget discussion. The state isn't talking budget yet. The governor, as Mr. Perez just pointed out, has put a hiring freeze on at the state. And until they get back to talk budget, there's not much for us to talk about. So that's 8A.
All right, okay. Yeah, with the halo. Oh, Bianca, I'm sorry.
We are already towards the end of April. All we have is, on the calendar is LPC on the 26th. And we won't do the budget work session next, Tuesday, right? So I will scratch that off. Going into May, we did put an alternate date for a proposed, budget work session. Are we not doing that either? Okay. May 2nd, Thursday, SEGO meeting at 9, LPC on the 3rd Friday. The following week is WIR, the annual conference. The 7th through the 10th, county managers and LPC meeting on the 10th. Our board meeting is on May 14th, Tuesday at 8, and with a proposed, extended meeting for a budget work session that meeting.
We plan on having a first, attempt to the balanced budget by that meeting. We should have most of the parts at least mostly settled in.
And will that be with the TNT rate or the above the TNT rate? You'll, I guess,
Yes.
you'll find out when you're
We're
doing
focused on the revenue side. We'll build the expense side at this point, and that'll help us answer that question. And we may give you options.
On the TNT rate, you mentioned that the vote has to be unanimous.
If you exceed the TNT rate from last year by more than 15%,
It has to be.
then it has to be unanimous. Which is why we'll talk about it early and often until we get to that point.
On the 15th May, Small Counties Eco and WIFA, the 16th CSA board meeting, 17th SEGO Executive Board meeting, and that's Friday. And then we have a board meeting scheduled that next Tuesday, the 21st. Again, with a proposed meeting, extended meeting for the budget work session. Are we still?
We'll do
keeping
that, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
The 23rd is Duncan and Morency's 8th grade promotion. 24th, high school graduations for both Duncan and Morency, and there's that LPC meeting. Monday, the 27th, office is closed due to Memorial. We do have a proposed budget work session at 3.
And
Just,
we'll see if we need that.
and then LPC on the 31st.
And just for information, some of those LPC meetings might be canceled because right now the legislature's meeting 1 day a week. And you and I both know what the topic is right now. And also on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th is an the Eastern County Organization field trip
Of May.
of May. And as so far, all three of our senator and our 2 representatives are going.
And that was May, right?
Yes, May. I'm sorry.
Going into June, our first board meeting is on the 4th, again with budget work session. County managers on the 14th, our second board meeting on the 18th. 19th is ECO and WIFA, and there's no CSA meetings in June, scheduled for June. That's
On the 18th is when we will adopt our tentative budget.
On the 18th. Now, do you have to do a special posting of that we will adopt, or did it just have to be an agenda item on our agenda?
Just agenda item. It's when we do have to do some publication prior to the final budget, and if we exceed the due date, and that happens in between. And we've talked before, we moved the tentative up because coordinating the local papers has been more difficult the last couple of years, so.
Anything else? Does anybody else have anything else?
that's all I have for you.
Guys? Okay, if maybe you have anything to add to no. I mean, to the calendar. Okay, if not, we'll go to agenda item 9, consent agenda.
So move that we approve the consent agenda.
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion on any of them? If not, all those in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you very, very much. We'll now go to agenda item 10, supervisory reports. Mr. Campbell.
I've got nothing for this week. Thank you.
Mr. Gomez. Okay, well, you know, at small counties, I thought it was one of the better ones we've had in a long time. We had Senator Bennett, we had Senator Gowan, and we had Representative Griffin. And we had a robust discussion on water, on election procedure. Anyway, we finally had to cut it short. We just, after that, we had discussions on how we felt on some of the election laws that have been proposed, and we felt like, you know, there's lots of checks and balances the way the elections are being done. And let's just come to the consensus that the elections aren't flawed and our people are doing an excellent job. But anyway, that was the small counties. Then in CSA, The main thing, Rudy Molera was, voted to go back as the, NACO representative, and Woody Klein was, voted to be the, WIR representative, and Patrice, Horseman was, voted in to do the second. We did have a, people from Carmen, from Access. They were there, and presented what Access is doing and some of the changes that they, have in the pipeline. We also, next, October 7th through the 9th, I'll give you that. They, is when we'll have our legislative, policy summit for CSA, and that's where we get together as the supervisors and put together, the items that we would like to promote during next year's, legislative session.
Where's it gonna be? I mean, Canal County, but where?
They announced that. Other than that, you know, NACO put together a booklet. It's all put together with AI, artificial intelligence. And, anyway, they had a whole bunch of these. It's amazing what they're doing. And, with that, that's my report. And, there being no further items on the agenda, this board meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.